All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Welcome to Chicago Junction, a radio program that is all about the amazing world of railroading, the many facets of the industry, and model railroading. I am your announcer, Brian Valou, and here is our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and the chief electrical engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norge on Monday, September the 18th, the year 2017. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, there's our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Oh, thank you very much, John. And our chief dispatcher is still out on medical leave. And so we're going to try to get this ball rolling and trying to keep it together. We are shark crewed tonight. So, as I said, I'm your announcer. I'm a retired Navy chief and railroader. I am also, I am a rail fan. Play with Lionel trains and Garden Railroads. I belong to National Railway Historical Society in Chicago chapter, member of the Reading Company Historical and Technical Society in Reading Museums in Hamburg, Pennsylvania, Pacific Southwest Railway Museum out of San Diego, California, and just an all-around farmer. And to my right,
I'm Ron Stock. I'm a retired library director from Eisenhower Public Library. Love riding the rails, going on Amtrak. I don't fly, and always had an interest in trains.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Berry. I'm a retired Chicago police sergeant, lifelong Lionel collector and operator. I'm a director with the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club, and like Brian, I'm a foamer. I'm just crazy mad about trains.
All right, so here's the whole crew for now. Before we get going, it's with sadness the world of railroad preservation had another staggering blow yesterday. Jerry Jacobson from Sugar Creek, Ohio, passed away in his sleep. He was 74 years old. Most people knew him. He was an entrepreneur. He became definitely Army diehard. Entrepreneur who wanted to own his own steam locomotive. Had the chance and bought a couple of short lines. And there was the start of his empire for Ohio Central. When he retired, he sold what he had. He had basically 12 lines he put together. Very successful. And when he retired, he ended up putting together a trust, or a foundation, and built himself the largest roundhouse that's going right now. Largest wood frame building, 18 stall roundhouse, turntable, ash pit, water tower, back shop, complete, all the machines, 19 steam locomotives, 22 diesels, 18 cars. And those that have been lucky enough to meet him and get to know him a little bit, He will be sorely missed. And I'd like to say, fair winds and following seas for a great man and soldier. Brother in arms.
Here, here.
Yeah. Well, Ron, do you want to get this party started?
Sure. The first thing I brought in today, a HO scale model of Woodland Scenics, and it's titled the Grill and Chill Trailer. It's a about 1950s trailer that was built and very nicely detailed. Woodland does really good scenery and buildings. This particular trailer is done in kind of like the sea green, kind of a cross between the green and blue. And it's got a little striped awning on it, and then along the awning is the grilling part of the trailer. Unfortunately, there's no people on it, but other than that, it does have a really nice scenery. It's got stairs going on the left-hand side up into the trailer, and then on the right-hand side they have a little patio with a grill and some chairs on it where people can chill out and do some grilling. And on the back end they have the propane tank, an air conditioner, and some other details that are there. It's got a TV antenna, and I saw it and I thought, that's pretty cool. So I went and got one. There's a second one that's coming out, which I'll probably talk about in a future episode. And I believe it's done in red. And on that one, it was sort of unique in that this one is all on one story, sort of what you see on most landlocked trailers and trailer parks. But the second one had like about a quarter of the trailers has a raised like cupola on it, which I thought was kind of neat. So I've only seen it in pictures, so once I see it in better detail I can describe it probably a little better. So that's one item. The second thing I'd like to ask, especially Brian, because him being a former engineer, I have a friend of mine, one of my former employees, evidently rides Amtrak, and on her Facebook page, I looked at her post, and oddly enough, she was talking about trains. Now, she didn't mention whether it was Metro or the L, but I assume because she's working out at a library in North Lake, that it was probably Metro that she was riding on. And she was complaining that some gentleman took up 4 of the seats and was happily working away on a crowded train. And somebody replied and said, well, you need to talk to the conductor. So what I'd like to know is, from your standpoint, if and when that comes up, what should a rider do? If they're upset by it, or how do you go about handling Metro etiquette?
Well, Metro etiquette, yes. Well, it's happened a lot. But conductors should be made known of it, and they will handle the situation with the person. Nobody's allowed to take up 4 seats.
Okay.
Unless they're in a body cast.
Right.
But no, I mean, he's sitting there doing it, and he's going to keep doing it until
somebody tells
him to stop.
Yeah.
In fact, the passenger themselves, they shouldn't be that self-conscious. They should go to and say, hey, this is, put the hog in the seat.
Okay. Did you find that happen a lot or not?
In my time, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I have another thing which I like going to train stores, and I go to Greyland Station a lot, which is up on Caldwell and Devon, and he's got a lot of old train magazines, and in this particular issue, which is from June of 1945, and has a terrific picture of them loading an engine, I presume, aboard a ship to be sent off during the war. And on the back they have, and throughout the magazine, the part of what I like is the 40s and 30s, 40s artwork that goes along, and then they also do like little quick quizzes. And this happened to be by the Northern Pacific. And the first question is Wawa Wawa. One of the many towns on the Northern Pacific whose name recorded romantic history was so called because of its citizens enthusiastically naming the town twice. Fact or fiction? And it's actually fiction. What a popular local joke, but name is actually from the Indian language and means flowing water. Some Northern Pacific towns and cities were named for soldiers of who guarded the railroad survey parties, i.e. Custard, Miles City. Others were named for the presidents of the Northern Pacific, Billings, Valdar, Oaks, and Hamford. Still others were named after railroad workers and their daughters and wives. The second question they ask, which you used to see in before entering tunnels, shoe fly is the railroad nickname for this fragile, which hangs from nearby tunnels and low clearance entrance. And what it was a bar which had like rope or string or metal hanging down that was very flexible to warn a brakeman who was up on top of the car that they were going to soon be entering the tunnel, so that they'd be aware of that. And the question that they're asking is the flanges that were there as a safety device, which warns the trainsmen of on the tops of the cars instantly, was called a telltale. A shoe fly is a temporary track built around an obstruction, so that was incorrect. And anyway, so some of these I kind of like the old railroad terms, especially stuff that you don't see today in railroads, and that's kind of cool. Plus, these issues are mostly dealing with steam engines, which was always, as a foamer, you're always loving steam engines, seeing pictures. There's a Classic Trains in the fall came out with a issue of Chicago in the 1930s, on-scene photographs of early streamliners and classic steam. And in it, the photographer was William Ranks, who was really well known, and he took a lot of pictures in and around Chicago of the various stations. And back then, Chicago, I think, had anywhere from 6 to 8 stations, a lot more than they have today. I think the only two that are left are LaSalle, and which is the Metro station, and then Union Station, which is both Metro and Amtrak.
Ogilvy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, that one's a more recent one, more modern.
Randolph Street.
Okay.
Harrison Street. Well, that's Harrison Street is gone. So is Dearborn.
There's remnants of some of them.
Yeah, I think the clock tower from
Dearborn, I think. Is it?
Yeah, it's either the Dearborn is. It's a beautiful red brick.
Yeah, it's left.
I think I remember seeing a picture once of either Gregory Peck or Clark Gable, and in the background is the clock tower. Because the newspapers used to have photographers that their only assignment was to be down near the train station and get pictures of the stars coming off the trains.
Yeah, the ones coming in on the Santa Fe, yeah.
Yeah, in Chicago, the two were Santa Fe and then New York Central, because a lot of the stars came in from
New York,
or transfer trains.
But like, they used 2 stations for New York Central. They either came in on the IC or they came into LaSalle Street. But the Central basically came into LaSalle, so.
Right.
in an old magazine someplace in my basement. I know what shelf it's on in the closet, but I have the track plan for Union Station, and it shows all the sidings for all the railroads. And it looks like a snake that went on a binge and ate a whole warren of rabbits. A well-fed boa.
So anyway, those are I get fascinated by old time stuff and seeing, especially photos and seeing what goes on. And they have a lot of great pictures of early diesels that were coming in, the Santa Fe and B&O and some of the others that were in Chicago that they have. And then also in it is they have 1960s Los Angeles station, which is a very beautiful station. As is Union.
Yeah, the last great Union Station built, actually,
Right.
1939.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, because 33 was CUT, and then 39 was LA Union Station.
Cool.
Yeah, because I remember in '89, I was stationed in Long Beach and took the trolley in for the celebrations at Union Station. The 44, 49, and 844 actually came into the station together to open the festivities.
Cool.
When they came down from one from Portland, of course, Cheyenne, and came in side by side. And then when they left, they went up to Cajon and get together.
Oh, that would have been a great photography trip.
And if I wasn't out to sea, I would have seen them come in.
So
We were pulling in when they went around in the station, and all the guys, they kept sending the mess cooks up and telling me how it looked on TV.
Oh, you had a pretty good crew then. They at least helped
Oh
you
yes,
out.
they wanted to keep me informed while I was doing the sea and anchor detail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're sending the mess cooks up impersonating a 75-ton per hour rock crusher. On a slightly more pleasant note than we opened on, a couple of episodes back, someone asked if Pientek's hobby store is still at 18th and Damon. And I had the opportunity to get in there 2 weeks ago. He no longer carries Lionel products because Lionel said he's not big enough to be a freestanding store. So he's got one older Lionel set, and he's got some odds and ends, 027 and O gauge stuff. He did have 4 K-line extruded aluminum New York Central cars that I saw. Most of what he has is HO and N gauge, but he's still trying to hang in. I was looking through Classic Toy Train, and one of the legendary Lionel stores, Frenchie's Train Shop, which went out of business in the 60s, they found the 49 Chevy package van. I believe it was a Suburban, the all-metal sided one, painted up with Frenchie's Train Shop on the side, and Menards is offering it in 1:48 scale for $19.95. So if you model anything after 1940 or post-war or up through the mid-60s, it's a nice vehicle to add to your collection. I was at an event not too long ago, and Canadian National was there with their safety awareness, and they were handing out ink pens that were printed up, see tracks, think trains, We've heard that comment before mentioned here. And Saturday, the 16th of September, which is just a day or so away, will be the first open house of the year for the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club. After a hard summer of maintenance of way, we're ready for guests. And one of our members, Steve, built a 9-foot mountain as you come into the train room from the gift shop, and it does a really nice job of masking the view of the rest of the layout. And up on top of the mountain is a observatory, a Department 56 observatory, and a U.S. Forestry Service fire tower. I had the privilege of building that fire tower over the last several weeks, complete with Ranger with binoculars, and I'm really pleased with it. And I showed Brian the photos. I'm going to be kind enough to share them with our other panelists, and then they'll be entered into the record. But I mean, it's just beautiful. And I have been requested to build a Smokey the Bear to go with it, so that's my next project.
That's really cool.
It's actually built from
like
Forestry
it.
Service plans. There's a website of Forestry Service fire tower plans in PDF, so I was able to print them out and use them as a template and build everything to scale. And I hope I got the paint scheme right. If not, it's certainly colorful enough, but as someone reminded me, you don't build to scale, you build to imagination. Although it has to be fairly close to scale.
Yes. Who did you also do the observatory, or did you?
No, that's a
somebody else?
Department 56 observatory.
Oh, okay.
And it's sitting on a bluff that's about 3 inches taller than the base of where the fire tower is.
Mm-hmm.
But the fire tower, the deck of the fire tower is about a half an inch above the tallest tree. So it really, really looks nice. There's a photo from the back side of the mountain. There's 2 photos from the front side, and there's a photo from up in the mezzanine. And it really looks nice. Really came out nice.
I know you mentioned it, but a lot of times when I hear things, it doesn't click in my brain. Are you having an open house? And
Yes.
What's the date?
Saturday the 16th of September, and the third Saturday of the month, with the exception of December, from now through May. And December, it will be each of the first 2 Saturdays, because if we played with trains on the third Saturday, none of us would have a home to go home to. Wives will only tolerate so much time spent playing with the trains. And the 2 December open houses, the chief engineer of the North Pole and Snowflake will be there in the prescribed seasonal uniform and sitting on the tailplate of the caboose up in the mezzanine. And you can take pictures of your children and grandchildren. So bring your own camera. There's no charge for it. So yeah, we're hoping for a real good open house season.
What's your address, or where's it at?
1311 South Schoolhouse Road in New Lenox. You can find us on Facebook at Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club, or on the internet at www.clrctrains, all continuous, all lowercase.com.
Great. The photographs you have are terrific.
I have to give Herb Coach credit for taking the photos. The ones I took with my cell phone, my little tiny flip phone cell phone, are good enough for showing people one-on-one if they've got decent eyesight. But he used his big old Nikon, and you can almost see the stubble on the Ranger's face.
Well, that's good. All right. We're getting ready for a big discussion. Looking at classic trains did remind me the last issue was dedicated to special trains. And this year was actually the 40th anniversary of a special train. And we've talked about it a couple times, and I decided to give it 3 minutes of my time to it. But in 1977, the B&O Railroad celebrated its 150th birthday. And they ended up doing it by putting a fine train together, passenger train. Hot off the heels of the American Freedom Train, a Reading T1 was standing by, all dressed and nowhere to go, and they decided to use her. And they actually painted it up to look like a Chessie diesel. Steam locomotive with a yellow kitty on the side. And went on a wonderful 8,000-mile journey in 77 and 78. And on that note, I'd like to say we are going to take a station identification.
And you are listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John Vitta Broadcast Center on Monday, September the 18th, year 2017. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Chicago Junction and our panel.
Oh, thank you, John. Remember, rush right out to get those products he talked about. Now, we're back and talking about the Chessie Steam Special. And it was fun. I was one of the lucky ones that got to be a volunteer and to be a gopher for him. Gopher pin grease, things like that. Get the bucket, get the mop. And it was
Get the
great.
coffee.
No, the coffee that's extra. But it was fun because they also taught me about the steam locomotives. I learned more about how it goes together and works, and you get to and look at it when you watch it, like a fine ballet. Everything's moving with a purpose. When it looks like it should be breaking apart. But it's one of the few machines man has made that appeals to all your senses. Right?
Yes.
I mean, you take a race car. Oh, those Indy racers are nice. You hear it and it goes. You don't see what makes it go. You go up to the steam locomotive, you hear it. You can smell it. You can feel it.
If you're standing downwind, your eyes water a little.
Well, that's the mistiness from remembering things. That's the romance. But you sit there and you can feel the heat radiating from it.
You forgot to mention the magic.
Oh yeah.
When you see those big wheels actually slip until they grab.
Well, you sit there and when you see it move, you see the pistons going back. You see what makes the wheels go round. You don't see that with an automobile, no matter how many horses it's got. And maybe I'm prejudiced towards this engine because it was built up in the town that I grew up in Reading, Pennsylvania. I was like, not that far from where it was built. And it's nice to know, she got caught in a fire and stuff, but she is in a museum in Baltimore now. And she, they get a new coat of paint on her. She'll look good again. They got 2 T1s that are being rebuilt right now. one on the Blue Mountain in Reading, 2102, and 2100's being rebuilt by a group of people up in Cleveland. But the one thing that prompted this was also the fact we were looking at talking about models. And Kevin started it by keep calling it a Berkshire. And I was telling you that Berkshire didn't pull. But Lionel did put the Berkshire, painted up for Chessie, and they kept painting it black. Just like the Reading T1 that MTH had made for Lionel under contract back in 91, 92. And when they came out with the Chessie Scene Special, it was all black, just about. And, you know, then looking at our pictures and go, oh. And I bought this wonderful little HO model from Precision, part of Broadway Limited. And they've got, you know, hey, it's got enchantment blue on it. All right. On the boiler. On the tender.
And it's closer to the picture than either of ours.
So true, so true. And, but, you know, it looks good. I mean, the sound system in this one is, you know, it's the rail sounds. And, you know, and they actually got a nice steam whistle.
This one, the Berkshire, has a nice whistle. The 611J that came out in the 80s has a whistle to die for. If you got a transformer that's got good power behind it, I mean, you can be 40 foot away from that engine and hear the whistle.
Oh yeah, this, when they made the 612 in the 90s, that was the whistle they put on it, 611s.
You know, and unfortunately, the Berkshire that I have, it's not the right engine. It doesn't have the secondary tender or the auxiliary tender. Neither did the J, the one I got. And I bought that one because my family and I had the opportunity to ride that train 30 years ago. My son will turn 30 in January. He rode kangaroo class on the J. My wife was very much pregnant with him, and he was kicking the daylights out of her right up to the point that the train started moving. Soon as the wheels turned, he went to sleep and stayed asleep all the way to Fort Wayne. When the train stopped, he kicked for 2 hours until we got back on the train. But, you know, someday he'll get married and he will have a son, and that young man will get my 611. But yeah, it's just a beautiful train.
Oh yeah.
Of course, this one ain't no slouch either.
Nah.
And you know, if they brought either of them back for an excursion through Chicago, I'd sell my trains to ride on that train.
Yeah, we'll see. When that was made, Lionel didn't make a Northern. So they used what they had. That was the closest they had. And they did that with a lot of models that they put out. You know, remember, Lionel's fun.
Right.
Like people will say, they like to operate trains. By God, we play with trains. So we don't care. Is the guy a little bit bigger?
And we don't hurt anybody when we do.
That is correct. Speaking of big things, we got a big deal coming up at the end of the month. From the 24th of September to the 30th is National Rail Safety Week. And Operation Lifesaver is combining with it. and putting out awareness for safety around railroad crossings, tracks, and against trespassing on tracks. And it's going to be a national event. One of the things that's going to be happening here in Chicago, especially during the week, every weekday is going to have a station blitz somewhere on one of the, with Union Pacific. All 3 lines are going to have station blitzes every day at different stations. They got people in charge of each of the different lines, and they're putting together the people to go to the different stations. Park Ridge, and D Road's going to be done, Mount Prospect, Crystal Lake. I know Edison Park's going to be done. Ravinia, Glencoe, Kenilworth, going up to Great Lakes on the North Line. The Northwest Line and North Line is what I said. Also, the West Line's going to have a bunch out there. So don't be surprised if you see people out there with their vests on, along with the cops, the local police force, at the Chicago Botanic Garden on Sunday the 24th, Wednesday the 27th, and Sunday the 30th. There will be Operation Lifesaver tables set up in the Railroad Garden.
Cool.
Handing out stuff to the kids and to the parents for safety and everything. And,
It's
everywhere we can, we'll be getting the word out.
it's probably fortuitous that you mentioned Operation Lifesaver and the Blitz, because today has not been a particularly good day for Metra. There was a train pedestrian incident on one of their northern lines this morning, and as I was walking out the door to come here tonight, there was a stoppage in all directions at 183rd and Hickory Trail or Hickory Trace. Another train pedestrian incident. At the time I left, the pedestrian was in critical condition en route to the hospital. People don't give trains the respect that they deserve and need.
People are in a hurry.
People need to know you cannot play Russian roulette with 5 of 6 cylinders loaded.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this before. I had the opportunity to ride a Operation Lifesaver train, and I saw multiple vehicles jump the gates in distances, in one case, of less than 25 feet in front of the engine. Unfortunately for them, there was a marked squad car shadowing the engine. So I'm sure they had an opportunity to explain to the judge why they felt they were exempt from obeying the "thou shalt not cross the tracks when the gates are down."
It's, it happens. People, they don't think. They make it and they say, see, they ain't going to get me. They're not going to get me. That one time that gets them, that's all it is.
Plus, people are wearing headsets and either with the music or talking on cell phones.
Well, that's
totally distracted.
Yeah, I mean, listen, look, the cars are quieter.
Right.
Yes, people with the headphones walking along, even especially the winter. Snow does muffle the train, and it's not.
That movie Mockingjay, Mockingjay, the Katniss, whatever, the one about the the Jennifer Lawrence movies. May the odds always be with you. The odds are always against you on
Hunger
on
Games.
Hunger Games.
Younger games.
The odds are always against you when there's a train involved.
Right.
You know, I've heard Brian say it so many times I can repeat it in my sleep without even batting an eyelash. You can't turn a train. You can't stop a train on a dime.
Right.
And unfortunately, there were 2 incidents today. Add to that, Metro has asked for their 4th consecutive fare raise in 4 years. So people are actually starting to say, you know, it's getting so expensive that they're thinking about taking the red line downtown instead of taking the train.
If they can get to it, yeah.
Yeah, well,
You know, see, that's something that we have no control over. They're going to do what they want to do.
yeah, well. The extension of the 95th Street station, almost all the steel work is up. They've got a lot of the decking for the south of 95th Street end, the concrete decking for the buses. That's up. So I would imagine within 2 years that's going to be operational, and they're going to be running an extension train all the way out to 130th Street. And I would be willing to bet money the station is going to be on the north side of 130th Street, on that 100-foot deep by 400-foot wide section of property that belongs to the Metropolitan Sanitary District, between the stand of evergreen trees to block the line of sight into the rest of their property, and 130th Street. Although I have no idea where they're going to put any kind of parking facility out there. But if they come off at a Dan Ryan and bank out to the west at along I-57 and tie into the UP tracks, those tracks come out at 130th and King, and that's what they're talking about. Piggyback on the right-of-way of the UP tracks, just like the Orange Line does along the freight tracks along the Stevenson, until it takes the cut down to come out near Western Avenue. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what we see, and we'll see which politician gets fat in the deal.
I'm just waiting to see what happens with Bensonville Yard.
There was something on the news as I was driving up about the hyper velocity train. They picked out a route that goes through Cheyenne. They said when they get this thing up, you're going to be able to go from Denver to Vail in 9 minutes. That'll make it real convenient to go snow skiing for people that don't mind running into trees.
Okay. Oh. All right, let's move on to something more pleasant.
Okay. I brought another magazine along, which is called the Chicago Surface Lines, linking Chicago's neighborhoods, and it talks, it's basically about trolley car systems, and it starts in probably like the 1940s, 30s, and runs through about the 60s when they finally became obsolete. It has a lot of terrific photographs. All parts of the city are covered. They show maps of all the various areas of the city based on various years, and also they go back and show you pictures of the surface lines in different eras. One, when they were in, maybe later on after they took them out, they ended up putting in kind of a medium center tree-lined area.
The top top left-hand, that's a Chicago trolley,
Right.
isn't it?
Yes.
I can remember riding those when I was a kid.
Yep. That was the other thing, too, because I remember being on some of the buses. I call them buses, not necessarily surface lines, but I remember being on them, taking a trip. I lived around Grand and Harlem, so they had several different areas where they had the trolleys. And it was always sort of interesting because occasionally they'd hit something and then the connection would disconnect and they'd have to go out and put it back on.
They have one at the Museum of Transportation in St. Louis, too.
Oh, cool. San Francisco has a group of them from across the nation, like probably about
Yeah.
10 or 12 of them.
Oh, from Philly.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, they've got a big selection
right.
of historic trolleys, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, they even got them from overseas.
And they have them painted in their original colors, too, which is really cool. That's a lot of fun.
Well, it's right up here in Kenosha.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah.
In fact, they bought a couple more.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was looking through odds and ends at home, and I found a token from the Honolulu Transit Company. That just brought a smile to Uncle Brian's eyes.
Believe it or not, they're actually testing their first train.
That
For
their new one is elevated, though,
Yeah.
correct?
yeah, they're finally actually putting power to it.
Cool.
I've got a coffee table book at home about trains in Honolulu, in the sugarcane trains and the munition trains, and
Oh yeah, they had an extensive narrow gauge line. They actually did have some standard gauge track there. They were on the docks, and they had two. In fact, when I was there, they had two standard gauge cranes that, for the 5 years I was there, they were running them up and down the docks, unloading all the pineapples that came in from the Philippines.
Yeah.
At Dole.
37 years ago, when my wife and I were newlyweds, we went to Hawaii, and they were still growing pineapple in Hawaii.
Oh, they still are. There's still Dole fields, and the fine has gone up. if you get caught taking a pineapple, because it's when they first plant, it takes 5 years to get a plant.
Wow.
The fruit, and when I was there, it was $100, and this was in the 70s. And it has gone up a little bit since then.
500 or more?
I think it's 500 is. I have to ask my nephew. And where he's living used to be cane fields. And they've got out at Eva Beach, that's where the ammo depot was. They got all the cane fields are down, and it goes out and it goes to where Barbers Point, which was the Naval Air Station. Part of it's operational, but they run a museum out of it, narrow gauge railroad, and going to all the way to where the power station was. The bridge was taken out, and then you run back right across the golf course.
Got to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, they're using the switchers they're using are ex-Navy. GEs.
Yeah, the Museum of Transportation in St. Louis, the little number 49 Picatinny Arsenal switcher.
Okay.
They've got its real life clone at St. Louis, and it's marked U.S. Army Transportation Corps number 1149. But,
Yeah, that's the same one that Lionel used to make theirs.
yeah,
It does exist.
it does exist, and it's got a gloss coat of paint on it, so it must have just gotten painted over the winter because it was still really shiny, and it's stored outside.
Well, that's good.
It hasn't had a chance to weather yet, and they were in the process.
Oh, trust me, it had weathered. I've seen it when it's weathered.
It wasn't currently weathered, and they were in the process of repainting several of their engines. They had a big Santa Fe steamer in there that was only partially repainted. So yeah, like every other museum, they need a massive infusion of coin of the realm just to get overhead coverage on their equipment. But I mean, so many beautiful pieces of equipment.
Oh yeah, well, it's just like it is out at IRM. A lot of that stuff they're gonna lose some stuff, but they've got to get it covered. And that's a shame. But we've got the fall season coming up, so we're gonna keep our eyes and ears out for some of the trips coming up. Fall foliage trains.
Believe it or not, I got a couple of retirees that are asking me for when trains are running.
Well, if they go to West Virginia, Huntington, if they look at it right now, they still might be able to get tickets on the New River train. It's running the last 3 weekends of October.
Even the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railway would be beautiful when
Yes.
the colors change.
They've got trains running in Reading, Pennsylvania, on the Blue Mountain Reading. They built a new outer station for specifically picking up passenger traffic on RDCs, but one of the trips will be steam powered, using the 4 1/4, going to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and then spend a couple hours up there. And also there's a new line open between Pottstown and Boyertown, going from Reading east towards Philly, and they'll be running trips. There's a railroad out of Kutztown that runs up to Allentown, and in fact they even got an actual doodlebug, old Pensy doodlebug that nobody was using. I believe it was in Flemington, New Jersey. They rebuilt it and got it running, so they'll be running fall trips also. And that's just that small area of that's eastern Pennsylvania. And of course they've got the Strasburg that's running. You can go across the border into Wilmington, Delaware, and you got the Wilmington and Western running there museum.
If you hit the right weekend, they've got excursions going out of Steamtown.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to hit the right weekend, and you got to figure out what you're doing far enough ahead of time to book the tickets.
That's it.
But when we were
they're
there,
popular.
When we were there, and it was a few years ago, they had a Canadian National steam engine that they were running. It had the big, beautiful maple leaf logo on the end of the observation car. Make you want to ride a train, eh?
Yes.
Oh, definitely. We got to do it, eh?
Ride a train in the Great White North, eh?
That's it. On that note, we are pulling into the station. As our fearless leader, Jack says, have happy trails to you. So, join us again next month for another adventure in Chicago Junction.
Please take your hats and your children with you.
Especially your children.
As our express comes into the station, we want to thank you for joining us on our journey through the wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and can be listened to on the web at www.windycityhometown.com, where you can listen to tonight's broadcast and all our past episodes, and also sample some of the other fine programs that are being offered. Again, this is your announcer, Brian Ballou. Till next month when we journey to Chicago Junction.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Monday, September the 18th, the year 2017. Chicago Junction was produced by Jack Ryan, directed by John DeVito, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chicando. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Thursday, September the 14th, the year 2017. Until next time, friends, please be safe and happy rails to you. And this is Radio Disney 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.